at number 10, Green Lantern. Sometimes it's one of Justice League's own members that takes down the entire team. Green Lantern is a prime example of that case, but it wasn't an intentional thing. Once upon a time, Green Lantern was possessed by Parallax, who's essentially a fear entity. With power like that, he was capable of taking down the Justice League. Needless to say, his reign of terror was put to an end before things got a little too out of hand. Speaking of members of the Justice League who have tried to kill the Justice League though, in at number 9, Superman. Kinda seems like a no-brainer, huh? The Man of Steel, out of all of the members of the Justice League, is perhaps the most capable of destroying them on a whim, if he were to turn. Because of his extreme power and strength, he's become a bit of a target over the years ever since the Golden Age, where many a plotline has revolved around villains trying to abduct the hero, possess him, steal his powers, etc., all to fight off other members of the JLA or take over the world. It's a bit of a reoccurring plot point, really. Even in the 2017 Justice League movie, Supes fights against his impending teammates after not being, dead no more. If anyone were to take on the JLA, it's him. That being said, as seen in the Injustice series or Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, even when Superman thinks he's won, Batman has really won. You just can't beat plot armor like the Cape Crusaders. Moving on to number 8, Amazo. Amazo managed to take down the Justice League in DC's animated universe. An android created by Professor Ivo, Amazo has the ability to mimic other characters' abilities. So as you can imagine, rubbing shoulders with members of the Justice League is not something that many wanted to see happen. Lex Luthor did though, and used Amazo, manipulating the situation so that the android would destroy the Justice League for him. Amazo fled Earth though, wanting to seek out more intelligent life. Ouch. He did return to Earth though, and had all of the powers of the members of the Justice League, so he was a pretty big threat. But not initially a threat for our heroes. Instead, his return was to kill Luthor, and the Justice League stood in his way, which resulted in Amazo taking them out. In at number 7, Gotham. We ain't talking the city here, friends, we talking the hero. Gotham was a promising hero who first appeared in dceu Rebirth issue 1 in 2016. Real name Henry Clover Jr., he and his partner Gotham Girl gave off some serious Superman Supergirl vibes. They were metahumans who initially aided Batman in saving a commercial plane from a Cobra Cult terrorist attack. Batman took them under his wing, but soon it's revealed that they got their powers from Hugo Strange and Psycho Pirate. Powers that would degrade their lifespan the more that they used them. They eventually go on a rampage and nearly kill the members of the Justice League before succumbing to their powers and dying themselves. Karma? In at number 6, Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter is one of those heroes in the DC universe who is continually full of surprises. Now for starters, he's a hero who is capable of a lot. The range of his abilities is actually pretty mind-blowing when you break it down. Ja'on has a genius-level intellect. He's got superhuman speed, strength, and endurance. A photographic memory. He can turn himself invisible. He can shapeshift. He has regenerative healing factor. He can fly. He has 9 Martian senses that we don't even fully know what that exactly entails. He can make himself intangible. He has heat vision. He's telekinetic and telepathic. Dude can do lots. Needless to say, he can be a pretty big threat. And this was the case during the JLA Trial by Fire story arc back in 2003, in which Ja'on attempted to cure himself of his fear of fire, opening him up to an ancient burning Martian named Furnace who used the hero's body to fight against the Justice League. They ended up getting saved by major disaster and all was well. And at number 5, Triumph. Triumph's involvement with the Justice League is the product of good ol' retcon. First appearing in 1994, he was a hero capable of controlling the electromagnetic spectrum. The character was revealed to be a founding member of the JLA, but on their first mission, he was teleported into a dimensional limbo that also affected time, which resulted in no one remembering him. Oh, superhero plot twists. So one can imagine why he was so damn entitled and had a bad temper. A lot of mulling over some negative feelings for a long time. He ended up being manipulated by an evil imp into bringing down the Justice League. Yes, an evil imp. The character is most famous for being strongly disliked, which writer Christopher Priest and editor Brian Augustine decided to play with by making the characters within the DC universe also strongly dislike him. In at number 4, Wonder Woman. If Superman made this list, you bet your butt Wonder Woman did too. Now unlike the Man of Steel, possession with the intention of turning her into a weapon against the JLA isn't really top priority for a lot of Diana's enemies. She's never really been the type to go after her fellow members on the team either. Rather, when Diana has turned against them, it's usually been on an alternate Earth. A prime example of that is the Flashpoint universe. She murders Aquaman, decapitates Mira, stabs Shazam, aka Billy Batson, a kid, right in the heart. She's ruthless and merciless when she needs to be. Luckily, Diana isn't a JLA member that's easily corrupted. Moving on to number 3, Nightwing. Being Batman's ward sure does have its perks. You're privy to everything, a lot of information, working with the world's greatest detective who's downright obsessed with being prepared for literally any situation. It's also no easy job, which is something that's been reflected in Dick Grayson's story arcs over the years, and is also kind of the basic premise of DC's Titans show, which is surprisingly really good, FYI. Regardless, the acrobatic crime fighter has had the upper hand over many, having been trained by the Dark Knight himself. Dude is capable of a lot, including taking down the Justice League. In Nightwing: The New Order, a story that occurs in a near-future world where society has rejected superheroes, he does exactly that. Metahumans are illegal. Nightwing heads a government-sponsored task force to hunt them down, which also includes hunting down the Justice League, which he does. Moving on to number 2, Shazam. Originally a character owned by Fawcett Comics, Shazam, whose name changed from Captain Marvel after a fun ping-pong match of a legal battle, can arguably rival the power and strength of Superman. Shazam, the name of the wizard who gave him his powers and also the word that he says to activate said powers, stands for 6 immortal elders: Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury, all of whom Shazam has traits from. So in other words, he's wicked strong when he transforms. While in the past he's been a member of the Justice League, he's also come up against them a few times, with the most memorable conflict and successful one being in Alex Ross and Mark Waid's Kingdom Come miniseries circa 1996. Billy Batson, now an adult, is manipulated by villainous mastermind Lex Luthor into taking on the Justice League and Batman's Outsiders team. He almost kills Superman in the process. Eventually he breaks free from Lex's control and ends up sacrificing himself in order to save everyone. Oh Shazam, you and that heart of gold. And finally, in at number 1, Batman. Of course Batman can take on the Justice League. Not only does the Caped Crusader have some serious plot armor, he's also notorious for being overprepared and paranoid. So, works with the Justice League on a regular basis. Wonders what would happen if any of them turned evil. Decides to come up with a backup plan to kill any of them if they lost it. Yep, that sounds like Bruce Wayne to me. That's exactly what went through Bruce's head during the 2000 JLA Tower of Babel storyline. Ra's al Ghul would steal all of Batman's information, revealing that the Caped Crusader had a plan if any of the members turned on him. We also got another glimpse of what Batman's intellect and preparation could do in 2014's Batman Endgame storyline, in which he fought the League while in one of his Bat mech suits while all of his peers were exposed to Joker toxin, when the villain returned for the first time after the iconic Death of the Family story arc. Needless to say, Batman's got this. Alright, there we have it friends. What other heroes can you think of that have defeated the Justice League in the past? How about villains? Let us know in those comments below. If you dug this video, spread the love, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd for more lists just like this one. We also have a nifty little playlist currently flashing on your screen that you should totally click and check out. In the meantime though, thanks for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video. And at number 10, Taskmaster. Taskmaster's got some pretty neat abilities. After injecting himself with a Nazi-created primer, aka a modified adrenal steroid cortisol, his mind's procedural memory potential was unlocked, allowing him to absorb knowledge immediately. This extends to his muscle memory, meaning when he sees someone fight he can mimic their moves, making him a rather difficult individual to battle since he can predict what other characters will do next in a fight. The only person who manages to evade this ability of Taskmaster's is Deadpool, due to the character being so darn unpredictable. In the comics, Taskmaster actually has defeated multiple Avenger characters, including Hank Pym's Yellow Jacket and the Wasp, and managed to fight both Iron Man and Captain America without completely getting his butt kicked. While it would be really darn lucky if Taskmaster managed to defeat the whole team, he's still got a decent chance of throwing them off guard and getting the upper hand if coming at them unprepared, or if they fought him with no knowledge of his abilities. Although these days in the comics he's considerably less threatening, having joined the Secret Avengers despite having a history of being a sleeper agent. Moving on to number 9, Cyclops. Cyclops is one of the original X-Men members, meaning it's likely that in the future of the MCU, whenever the X-Men are introduced, we'll be seeing Scott Summers make an appearance, running with the good guys. But he isn't always good in the comics. During the Avengers vs. X-Men story event, Cyclops was a major threat to the Avengers, and like the main antagonist in that story arc. Subjectively speaking. In this story arc, Cyclops becomes possessed by the Phoenix Force, and he essentially conquers Earth, which forces the Avengers into hiding. Cyclops would eventually lose control of the Phoenix Force, becoming Dark Phoenix, and he would kill Charles Xavier. But he is later defeated by his daughter, Hope Summers, and Scarlet Witch. Not saying that we'll be seeing Scott's more nefarious side anytime soon, but it's something that once upon a time was a prominent threat, so who knows how things may pan out in the future. And at number 8, MODOK. MODOK is a villain that's existed in the comics since 1967, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And in case you're wondering, his name stands for mental organism designed only for killing, or at least that's what he made his name stand for. The M also sometimes stands for mobile or mechanized, might I add. Anywho, he was initially an employee of AIM before they used him for an experiment, which turned him into MODOK, and he rebelled against them, taking over AIM in the process. He's not only got a superhuman intellect in that big ol' head of his, he's got psionic powers and the ability to calculate probabilities too. Here's the thing though, the likelihood that we'd ever see MODOK entering the live action MCU doesn't seem super viable. Recently Recently, the character was announced to be getting his own animated series on Disney's streaming service, and it seems to be an adaptation that will make the character more of an anti-hero rather than a flat-out villain. Plus, I don't think anyone ever wants to imagine the possibility of MODOK manipulating Carol Danvers into thinking he's a hot little piece that she can make out with. Yes, that actually happened in the comics. Moving on. In at 7, Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom may not originate as an Avengers villain, but he's come into conflict with the team in the comics many a time, along with some of their members individually over the years. He's perhaps one of the most nerve-wracking villains thanks to his abilities. Victor is a scientist, a sorcerer, an inventor, and a polymath with a genius-level intellect. He can manipulate electricity, project and absorb energy, create protective shields, and can summon demons thanks to that sorcery. But perhaps his most defiant traits are his remarkably indomitable will and his code of honor. He once saved Captain America from drowning because Cap had saved his life in the past. He knows how to take advantage of a situation and can be cunning and manipulative when he needs to be. Combining technology and sorcery has made him quite deadly. Now that the rights for the character and the Fantastic Four are in the hands of Marvel Studios and Disney, I'm sure we'll eventually see Dr. Doom make an appearance in the MCU. Whether or not that'll have anything to do with the Avengers though, who knows? In at number 6, Thanos. Technically this is true. The first time around in Infinity War, Thanos defeated the Avengers and was successful in his plan to eliminate half of all living things in the universe. And then in the Prime timeline in Endgame, he used the stones to destroy the stones before Thor decapitated him. The second time around in Endgame, when 2014 Thanos showed up on the Prime timeline, he almost defeated them again if it weren't for Tony Stark sacrificing himself to kill off Thanos and his army once and for all. All of the spoilers in this number. Needless to say, if another timeline's Thanos popped into the Prime timeline again, we know that the Mad Titan would be one hell of a threat for the Avengers, with or without the Infinity Stones in his possession. And at number 5, Magus. Who's worse than Thanos? Well, how about the guy who ends up wielding the gauntlet in the comics after Thanos fails? Rather, the guy's evil self. We're talking about Adam Warlock's less ethical other half, Magus. So for context, during Warlock's cosmic travels, he comes across the Universal Church of Truth and their god, a fellow named Magus. Turns out that Magus is himself from the future, a corrupted version who occasionally pops up to screw with Adam. Magus believes that the concepts of good and evil are tools that allow one to change sentient beings and craves all to worship him. And if they don't, he'll just kill them. What about his powers? Well, he's got cosmic awareness, he's a shapeshifter, he can summon the in-betweener, he can manipulate energy, absorb a being's life force, he uses quantum magic, can manipulate time and transmute reality, is psionic, and of course possesses superhuman strength and all that jazz. Overall, he's incredibly deadly. I think I'd probably prefer to stick to Adam Warlock instead. In at 4, Sentry aka Void. Sentry aka Robert Reynolds may have only been introduced into the Marvel Universe back in 2000, but he's definitely not a threat to take lightly. He was granted his powers from a super soldier serum that moves his molecules an instant ahead of the current timeline, although in the Age of Sentry miniseries it's implied that he's actually a refugee sentient life force from another universe. He's a little like Superman to an extent, but said to be omnipotent, who generally holds back his full might. When he was first introduced though, Robert was a depressed chubby dude who started remembering a different past, which unravels the truth, that he existed in the Marvel Universe all along, but everyone's memories have been altered to forget him entirely. This is because Robert was trying to suppress Void, an entity within him who has all the same powers as Sentry does. He can shapeshift, control weather, and create something called Infinity Trundles too, which attacks one's mind in traumatic ways. He's gone toe-to-toe with some of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe as well. Needless to say, you can imagine why the Avengers would prefer Sentry over Void. Moving on to number 3, Mephisto. Mephisto is literally Marvel's version of the devil. He's based on Mephistopheles, the demon from the Foss legend, and first appeared back in the Silver Age in 1968 in The Silver Surfer issue 3. Written by Stan Lee, the character would be a tempter who offered the Silver Surfer the world, dangling his off-limits long-distance lover in front of him too. All things that the Surfer rejected thanks to his goodness and nobility, but thus started a pattern with the character in the comics. He's constantly used as a vehicle for temptation, making deals with the devil, and he's always a character ready to take advantage of a situation. Hell, he even hung out with Thanos while the Mad Titan had the Infinity Stones in the 1991 Infinity Gauntlet series, knowing that the Mad Titan was emotionally unstable. So what makes him deadly? Well, he's an immortal entity with magical powers, capable of a whole lot. He can alter time, alter memories, project illusions, shape and size shift, has superhuman strength and durability. And if his physical form is destroyed, he can regenerate and reform in his home domain. So why make deals with characters? Well, Mephisto cannot subjugate the will of another without their permission, which is why he manipulates them through pacts. So you can see how something like that could get real tricky for the Avengers of the MCU. The closest we've ever gone to that kind of deep-rooted manipulation was likely in Age of Ultron, when Scarlet Witch manipulated their minds. And well, that kinda screwed a few of them up for a little while, so Mephisto could be an issue. In at 2, Galactus. Next to Thanos, Galactus is one of the biggest bads to ever find himself in the panels of Marvel Comics. But here's the thing about Galactus. He's not evil per se. Rather, the reason Galactus does what he does best, going around and devouring planets, is because he's fulfilling his hunger. He's essential to the balance of the universe. Guess no one filled Thanos in on that, did they? In the MCU, that is. Yet in the comics, Galactus has been a major threat of the planets, having decided on Earth as a planet suitable for his consumption. So, needless to say, he would be a gigantic threat for the Avengers if he ever did come their way. And finally, in at number 1, Korvac. Korvac first appeared in 1975 in Giant Size Defenders issue 3, created by Jim Starlin, who also created Thanos, and Steve Gerber. Initially, Korvac was meant to be a throwaway character, a dude named Michael Korvac who hailed from Earth 691 and went through some serious crap. He was a computer technician who, after the alien brotherhood of Badoon invaded his planet, was punished by them when falling asleep at work, turning his upper body into a machine, essentially making him a cyborg. He's used by the Grandmaster as a pawn in battling Doctor Strange and the Defenders, but after an encounter with the Guardians and Thor, he became a real threat. Enter the Korvac saga. Korvac fled his universe and came to Earth 616, where he stumbles upon Galactus' space station and decides to download Galactus' knowledge into his own body. This causes him to be imbued with the power cosmic, essentially becoming a god, and he decides to reshape Earth into a utopia. Elders of the universe begin to sense his existence. The Collector, in an act of protection, decides to remake his own daughter, Karina, into a powerful being to use as a weapon against him, but she and Korvac fall in love. Korvac is eventually found out by the heroes of Earth and is forced into battle, killing a ton of heroes in the process. And after defeating them all, what does he do? He commits suicide after sensing that Karina doubts him, and in the process restores the Avengers and Guardians to life before he dies. While the Korvac saga has been occasionally criticized for its storyline, you can't deny that he'd make an interesting villain for the Avengers to take on in the future of the MCU, especially now that there's all these alternate realities that are popping up and exist. Starting us off in at number 10, Riot. Let's get one thing straight about the Clintars, otherwise known as symbiotes. When a Clintar has offspring, those offspring are always exponentially stronger than their parent. It's a Clintar fact of life. Riot is the offspring of Venom. Now, back during the Venom Lethal Protector story arc, the nefarious Life Foundation decided to capture Venom and create Guardians that could be used to protect their wealthy clients if there was ever a fallout during the Cold War. Carlton Drake and his team forcibly extracted 5 Clintar seeds from Venom, his unborn offspring, and then hatched them in a lab. Out of those 5, the symbiote known as Riot is the most violent and unpredictable. Riot, along with his brothers and sisters, would lure Spider-Man and attack him, almost killing him if it wasn't for the appearance of our next number. In at 9, Venom. There's a reason why Venom makes such a fantastic nemesis for the web-slinger. Despite Riot being technically stronger than Venom, thanks to, being his offspring, Venom has an upper hand over many of the symbiotes who came out of the Life Foundation, simply because the symbiote has bonded with Spider-Man in the past, and initially had a grudge with the web-slinger after that. A grudge that was doubled thanks to his new host Eddie Brock believing that Spider-Man was responsible for his career failures. Nothing like a personal vendetta to give you an upper hand. Venom also knows intimate details about Peter, having been bonded to the hero in its very first comic book appearance after Secret Wars, or technically at the end of Secret Wars. Moving on to number 8, Hybrid. Remember how we mentioned that Venom had 5 offspring extracted from him during Lethal Protector? Well, those offspring, after being defeated in that storyline and then turning their back on the Life Foundation, ended up merging together. The 4 surviving ones merged into a creature called Hybrid. Having been contained to the Vault, the prison for superhuman criminals, after the symbiote invasion in Web of Spider-Man Super Special Issue 1, they ended up breaking out, amalgamated, and then briefly bonded with a guard named Scott Washington. Hybrid is made up of Riot, Phage, Lasher, and Agony, and briefly became a vigilante, defusing when Brock began his hunt for symbiotes, leaving the 4 of them to be found by the US Army and compiled into a team to actually fight our next number. In at 7, Carnage. Carnage is a particularly evil symbiote who bonded with mass murderer Cletus Cassidy after Eddie Brock was briefly incarcerated with the serial killer. So often symbiotes will just discard their offspring without thinking anything of it. They're not very parental, to say the least. This is something that Venom did when he rebonded with Eddie when the anti-hero was in prison. The symbiote, abandoned in the cell, discovered Cassidy and bonded with him, entering through a cut on his hand and then amalgamating with his bloodstream. He's significantly stronger than both Spider-Man and Venom combined, and decided to use his newfound powers to go on a murder spree. Guess that's what you do when you're a psychotic killer. That's when he first crossed paths with Spider-Man, who needed the assistance of the Fantastic Four to combat him. Spider-Man eventually had to recruit Venom as well, which likely resulted in Carnage being captured, although that was not the last of the evil symbiote. Spidey and Venom have had to team up on multiple occasions to take care of Carnage, including in the 90s storyline Maximum Carnage, whose thirst for blood and chaos seems utterly insatiable. In at 6, Scorn. Scorn first appeared in Carnage issue 4 in 2011 after Carnage Carnage was used to create a hybrid prosthesis combining technology and the symbiote. Now this hybrid of sorts broke free and bonded to Tannis' knives. Scorn is more powerful than both Venom and Carnage combined. It's more resistant to injury than both of them and Spider-Man combined too, being able to withstand blows from all three of them and be barely fazed by it. Scorn can exert herself to peak capacity for 48 hours straight and even has a major one-up on Spider-Man's spider sense. Her sense is more exact, and is more specific as to where exactly the danger is coming from that is triggering it. Scorn also has the added bonus of being able to manipulate data and connect with all sorts of technology thanks to being that hybrid, which allows her to easily hack into systems, break codes, or even restore information if she so chooses. Up next, number 5, Anti-Venom. First appearing in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 569, Anti-Venom is birthed after Venom, who at the time was bonded with villain Mac Gargan, attempts to rebond with Eddie Brock after the anti-hero had been cured of his cancer by Mr. Negative, Martin Lee. When Venom attempts to bond with him, Brock's skin becomes caustic, and he's enveloped in a new white symbiote that was created by antibodies in his white blood cells, charged with Lee's light force energy. He's immune to heat, fire, and sound attacks, and produces antibodies that can cure pretty much anything, from parasites to radioactivity to diseases and more. And when he gets close to Spider-Man, he cancels out Spider-Man's powers entirely. Brock eventually sacrificed Anti-Venom though when attempting to cure people from the Spider Island virus, because he's actually a hero now. And at number 4, Grendel. Grendel is a symbiote dragon. Actually, a symbiote dragon. Grendel was created by Null, the symbiote god. More on him later. And leads a whole legion of symbiote dragons which go around the galaxy and eat entire civilizations for fun. Oh, what a life. Grendel has also been around for ages, with records of it having terrorized those in medieval times. It's also terrifying for another big reason. It's not susceptible to the same kinds of weaknesses that other symbiotes are affected by, meaning heat or sonic waves or intense noises don't bother it. It wasn't even Spider-Man or Venom who stopped Grendel either. Thor had to get involved and eventually managed to trap Grendel and put an end to it. Up next at 3, Toxin. Toxin debuted back in 2004 in the Venom Carnage crossover. Toxin is Carnage's offspring, and Daddy Dearest really doesn't like him, all thanks to fearing that Toxin would be stronger than him. Venom, upon realizing that Carnage was pregnant, so to speak, decided to seek out Carnage and its offspring. Carnage had planned to kill its spawn, but Venom tried to protect it, hoping to raise it and have it become his new partner. Toxin is the 1000th symbiote in their lineage, and thanks to that, risks the chance of becoming psychotic and violent due to genetic breakdown, hence why Venom had to keep such a keen eye on him. But luckily for Venom and Spider-Man, Toxin turned out to be good, and worked as an ally of both Venom's and the Web Slingers. He would first bond to NYPD officer Patrick Mulligan, and then to Brock after Mulligan's death, in which he developed a venomous bite, a fun new little ability alongside his already boosted symbiote powers. And at number 2, ZZXZ. ZZXZ is a symbiote who feeds on brains. I mean, not a surprising trait of the Clintars, they're pre-inclined to do so, to be honest, but the desire to eat brains is one that really motivates the symbiote. It's like his jam. It was discovered by the Shi'ar, who claim it's one of the most deadly and dangerous criminals in the entire galaxy. Appearing in X-Men Kingbreaker issue 2 from 2009, the last we saw of ZZXZ was it being flung at the corrupted Charles Xavier from the Cancerverse, who was just one giant brain. You can see where this is going, and was likely left floating in space after that encounter. Compared to other symbiotes, ZZXZ feeds on a host's brain rather than their adrenaline, and is capable of a high degree of mimicry, able to blend into its surroundings and enhance any superpowers that its host has significantly. And finally, last but definitely not least, and at number 1, we have Null. Null is the god of the symbiotes. He is an ancient evil deity who predates the existence of the universe itself, and is responsible for creating the Clintar race. So what makes this Clintar god so powerful? Well, he's killed Celestials. He has divine physiology with powers exceeding most other deities. He possesses the ability to create, control, and manipulate eldritch darkness, which is the manifestation of the Primordial void that existed before the universe itself, which is also called the Living Abyss. Kind of a ironic name for that. He can create symbiotes and dominate them, manipulating them in a sort of mind hive way, directly controlling them and seeing through their eyes. He has lived for over 13.7 billion years, is self-sustaining, can shapeshift, and has a regenerative healing factor. And fun fact, in Swedish, null is a vulgar word for having sex. So all in all, he's a pretty gruesome god whose crusade to annihilate all of existence kinda sucks, but luckily for the Marvel Universe, he has a weakness for light when wielded with divine power of other gods, so at least that is reassuring. And at number 10, Green Lantern and Troia. This one comes from Countdown to Final Crisis issue 3 and features an evil Mary Marvel, who Green Lantern and Troia attempt to take out. Those are two foes who don't really go down all that easy, if we're being honest. Well, maybe Green Lantern, but more on that later. Mary manages to get the upper hand on them. After knocking out Green Lantern, she grabs hold of his ankle and then uses him as a weapon to club the crap out of Troya, beating her unconscious, which apparently makes the sound effect whap 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 whap, in case you ever just want to know what Hal Jordan's body colliding with another body sounded like. For you curious Hal Jordan fans out there. In at number 9, Bruiser and Wolverine. So Wolverine is by no means a superhero that goes down without a fight, or easily. But for this member of the Runaways, knocking Logan down was no big deal. This happened in Runaways Volume 2, Issue 12. Now for context, Bruiser, aka Molly Hayes, aka Princess Powerful, is the youngest member of the Runaways. She's the sole mutant on the team, and her powers, despite her parents being telepathic mutants, are that of superhuman strength and invulnerability. She knocks Wolverine out in one punch, with him going flying and landing into a snowbank, muttering to himself, "Only 198 mutants left on the stinking planet, and that girl's gotta be one of them." And at number 8, Punisher vs. Bruiser. We got another Bruiser one! If you thought Wolverine's defeat via Bruiser Molly Hayes was bad, Punisher's is like 10 times worse. In Runaways issue 26, when the team are posing as a crime syndicate as part of a plan to take down Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, they cross paths with the Punisher. And guess what? Poor Frank Castle has no clue what they're really doing. He thinks he's going after the crime syndicate. Frank holds a gun to Chase Stein's head, another member of the Runaways, only to be met by Molly's fist colliding with his gut. Castle goes down immediately. And you know it's more than just his body that ached. His ego was clearly bruised as well. Oh. In at number 7, Superboy. It should be no surprise that we've included a crippling, embarrassing defeat from the Silver Age on this list. Many a story, especially as far as DC is concerned, were quite wacky back in that era, including this one, The Surrender of Superboy from Superboy issue 110. In front of a massive crowd of people, Superboy and Krypto are challenged to a game of tug-of-war by a scrawny old man. But the catch is, this old man ain't a regular pensioner. He's Merlin the Wizard in disguise. Merlin uses magic to win the match, which humiliates Superboy and Krypto in front of a massive crowd gathered in Smallville. Merlin reveals the truth at the end after being victorious, but hey, that's still pretty embarrassing. I mean, Krypto can walk away from that, he is an adorable dog. Superboy? Not so much. And at number 6, Batman vs. Wonder Woman. Batman is generally the one embarrassing other heroes from time to time, but in this case it's Wonder Woman who hands him his butt on a platter. In the 2002 graphic novel Wonder Woman the Hecate, our hero takes part in an ancient ritual called the Hecate, in which she's honor bound to protect a young woman who comes a-knockin' on her doorstep named Danielle. Turns out Batman has been hot on Danielle's heels after she committed a crime. Batman, searching for the fugitive, tracks Danielle all the way to Wonder Woman, in which Diana tells Bats that she can't let him have her, and proceeds to wail on him, knocking him down onto the street in front of astonished civilian eyes. Later, Batman tries to get the girl again, but this time Diana really lets him have it, ending their conflict with her stomping her boot on top of his head until he finally gives in and tells Wonder Woman that she wins. To be fair, Danielle committed a crime because she was in a very precarious situation, which Wonder Woman totally gets, and Batman's like, no mercy, not gonna do it, and then Wonder Woman's just like, bam, bitch. Up next, number 5, Dollar Bill. Compared to most of the other superheroes on this list, Dollar Bill from Watchmen doesn't actually have superpowers. Rather, he's a superhero who is sponsored by a bank, so he doesn't even have Batman's genius intellect or all of the other things that Batman's. Now, despite the original Night Owl calling him a straight shooter and a stand-up guy, he's also a major misogynist and super homophobic, which makes it a little easier to feel less bad for him. Dollar Bill's embarrassing defeat also resulted in his death. This happened when his cape got stuck in a revolving door and he was shot point blank in the face by a criminal, who was like, hey, he's trapped, I'm just gonna... definitely not the most heroic way to go. And at number 4, Doctor Strange gets choked. The Ultimatum story arc in the Marvel Ultimates universe is filled with a lot of controversial and brutal superhero deaths, but perhaps one of the worst is Doctor Strange's while fighting his mystic nemesis Dormammu. During battle, Dormammu takes Strange's cape and strangles him with it, something you'd think the Sorcerer Supreme would be able to get out of, or at least avoid, considering he is the Sorcerer Supreme. But nope, he's strangled to death in one of the most graphic and embarrassing panels in the storyline. Look at his face, it's so purple. Ugh. And at 3, Changeling. If you thought being strangled by your own cape in battle is bad, then this one is definitely going to make you cringe. Changeling, aka Beast Boy, was defeated in a much different manner. Off of the battlefield actually, but it was a direct attack to his narcissistic nature. During the famous Judas Contract story arc, Deathstroke and Terra, the latter whom Beast Boy had romantic feelings for, decide to take Gar out in a more creative manner. Deathstroke sends Changeling a bunch of letters from fans, requesting autographs from the young superhero. Gar starts signing them all and licks a bunch of envelopes to send the signed photos to his adoring fanbase. Except those envelopes, well, the glue on them was drugged, meaning he's been licking poison paper, and of course he gets knocked out because of it. Definitely not a story he would want to tell his fellow teammates. Vanity hurts, friends. And at number 2, Batman vs. Guy Gardner. Batman has always had beef with Green Lanterns. While his particular grudge over Hal Jordan had to do with the Green Lantern being possessed by Parallax and causing all sorts of trouble, when it comes to another particular Lantern, Guy Gardner, well, Bruce just doesn't really like him all that much, which is like totally easy to understand because Guy is a very unlikable guy, and Guy really gets on the Caped Crusader's nerves in Justice League issue 5. So Batman knocks out Guy with one punch in front of all of their fellow Justice League International peers. It's embarrassing as hell for him. In Batman's defense though, for 4 issues prior to that one, Guy was incredibly obnoxious and had a real issue with Batman calling the shots as a leader of sorts. Batman finally breaks, punching Guy out, breaking his nose, and leaving him unconscious on the ground while everyone else looks on in awe and wonder. This shuts Guy up for like a few issues, putting him in his place. But you can never really shut up Guy Gardner, can ya? And finally, in at number 1, Hal Jordan in the Yellow Room. By now you know that Green Lanterns have a history of getting their butts kicked in not so pleasant ways, so naturally we're ending off this list with yet another Green Lantern humiliating defeat. This one is from Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin. You know, the comic where Batman is a complete dick and verbally abuses Robin a whole lot. But it's not just Robin who gets the short end of the stick from Bruce, it's also his favorite buddy Hal Jordan. Aside from sassing the hell out of him, at one point Batman literally paints an entire room yellow in spite of Hal, then proceeds to torment him all while the Boy Wonder, who's basically been on the job as a superhero for like a day at this point, surprises Hal, steals his Green Lantern ring, and then proceeds to beat him up. So not only is he triggered by the color yellow, which like is a thing that triggers Hal Jordan, it's like, dude, what is it like getting your ass handed to you by a preteen? Not fun, based on Hal's expression in these panels. What other superhero? In at number 10, Maestro and the Hulk. In 1992, a Hulk story titled Future Imperfect was released, penned by Peter David with art by George Perez. In it, we got a glimpse of the future, and surprise, surprise, it lives up to its title. 100 years into the future, there has been a nuclear war in which most of the superhumans on the planet were killed off and humanity is on the brink of extinction. Fun! But guess who's still kicking around? The Hulk. Or rather, Maestro, a future version who has become the supreme ruler, so to speak, of the planet, and has also been driven mad thanks to constant exposure to nuclear radiation that his body has absorbed. When Maestro and Hulk from our time eventually face off, Maestro's superior strength and his experience, along with the fact that he knows how this version of himself from the past likes to fight, he's able to dominate the combat, and even breaks Hulk's neck. Eventually though, the Maestro meets his end, being killed in the same gamma bomb explosion that created the Hulk in the first place. It's a complex storyline, people. In at number 9, Dark Beast and Beast. Dark Beast is a version of Beast, aka Hank McCoy from Earth 295, the Age of Apocalypse timeline. Dark Beast is arguably Hank's scariest alternate. A mad scientist of sorts, he would conduct unethical experiments on living subjects, often to do with genetics, which would typically result in a whole lot of torturous events. He was one of the few characters to find his way over into the 616 universe after the initial Age of Apocalypse story event, and after a brief stint of amnesia, Dark Beast began to continue his genetic experiments in secret. And then, when X-Men Volume 2 issue 49 rolled around, Dark Beast had kidnapped the 616 Beast, kept him prisoner behind a brick wall, and then infiltrated the X-Men, matching his fur color with the 616's fur color. He kept this up until the Onslaught saga, when he joined up with the villain who had immediately known that Dark Beast was not the real Beast. In at 8, Wally West and Heroes in Crisis. Oh, Heroes in Crisis. Heroes in Crisis was essentially a murder mystery story that also doubled down as a mental health PSA involving superheroes. In theory, great idea. In practice, not so much. In it, it is revealed that Wally West was the one behind a massacre, having committed the crime, and then he ran forward in time to kill his future self so he could bring back his corpse and use it to shed any onus on him being responsible. That is shit. The worst part is that he ended up basically framing Harley Quinn and Booster Gold for the murders too. His justification? Well, he was a little messed up after his entire family was wiped from existence. So, long story short, Wally killed Wally. Moving on. In at 7, The Crossing, Tony Stark. The Crossing is notoriously one of the worst crossover events in Marvel's history. In it, Tony Stark turns evil and a younger version of himself, who we will refer to as Teen Tony for the purpose of this number, is brought into the present day to essentially fight him. This went down in 1995, and the regular original Tony was revealed to have been seriously manipulated by Kang the Conqueror for years and years. Now, old Iron Man dukes it out with the Avengers after the truth is exposed, and the Avengers believe the only person capable of stopping Tony is himself. So they travel back in time to acquire a teenage Tony Stark who has yet to be corrupted by Kang. Whisk him into the present, they duke it out. Old Tony beats the shit out of Teen Tony, but eventually regains control long enough to sacrifice himself to end Kang's master plan. He dies and Teen Tony becomes Iron Man. And the best part? After the whole Onslaught saga, this story was pretty much retconned, with old Tony returning. Sorry, Teen Tony. In at 6, Young Cable killed Old Cable. Once upon a time, there was a whole storyline in which the X-Men of the past, the first original 5 members, were brought into the future. This was courtesy of Brian Michael Bendis, of course. During all of this, the teenage version of the time-traveling mutant Cable was also kicking around, and he knew how dangerous it was that these younger versions of the X-Men were chilling in the present day for so long. So in the Extermination series, he ends up killing his older self and helping the time-displaced X-Men return home, which they're like totally down for. At the beginning of Extermination issue 1, Old Cable is gunned down by his younger self, and it was a big shocker at the time. In at 5, Iron Lad and Kang the Conqueror. This number is kind of a little bit of a reverse. It's still a character defeating the original, but the original is the scary version rather than the alternate. We are talking about Iron Lad and Kang the Conqueror. So, Iron Lad first appeared in Young Avengers issue 1 in 2005, when he's rescued by his time-traveling adult self, Kang the Conqueror. At the time, he's 16, and he's rescued from an event that would have turned him into the villain his future self became, aka Kang. He then ends up nabbing some tech from Kang, goes into the past, and seeks out the aid of the Avengers, who were disbanded at the time. He ends up forming the Young Avengers and calls himself Iron Lad, modeling himself after Iron Man. Eventually, Kang gets pissed and wants to return his time-displaced younger self to where he belongs, but instead he ends up battling the Young Avengers, and Iron Lad, using Hawkeye's sword, stabs Kang right through the chest, killing him, and terrifyingly enough causes some major changes to the timeline, the likes of all of the Avengers being killed off, Jessica Jones losing her baby, and Wiccan and Hulkling disappearing. Iron Lad realizes the only way things will go back to normal is if he becomes Kang the Conqueror, which is tragic in itself. That's what he does, he returns to his time. In at 4, The Batman Who Laughs. The Batman Who Laughs is an amalgamation between Batman and the Joker, who hails from the dark multiverse on Earth -22. He's what happened to Bruce Wayne when Bruce killed the Joker, and the Joker's body let out a toxin that he then inhaled. This combined the genius and meticulous strategist skills of Bruce and the absolute madness and love of chaos of the Jokers, creating arguably one of the scariest DC villains in the past decade. Acting as one of the prime antagonists in the Dark Knight's Metal event, he led a group of evil alternate Batmans from other Earths in the Dark Multiverse under the directions of the demonic entity Barbados, who wanted to destroy the regular multiverse. And he continuously managed to give our regular Batman a run for his money, knowing exactly how the Caped Crusader thinks, always managing to be one step ahead of him because of it. So while he arguably managed to defeat Bruce in a one-on-one match, Bruce had to do something so unpredictable in order to defeat this nefarious character. He got a little help from his arch nemesis, the Joker. But that wasn't the last of this evil alternate. Spoilers, my friends, the Batman Who Laughs came back to screw with the Prime Earth Batman some more. And without giving away what went down, let's just say that Bruce may have met his deadliest foe to date. In at 3, Onslaught. The Onslaught saga is yet another controversial story event, primarily because many people dislike it. True story. That aside though, it does feature an evil version of not only one character, but technically 2. Onslaught is the amalgamation of Charles Xavier and Magneto, who came to be when Xavier used his telepathic powers to shut down Magneto's mind, turning him catatonic, which allowed for the darkest aspects of Magneto's mind to enter into Xavier's subconscious. Now this created a whole separate persona, Onslaught, who remained dormant for a while before awakening. He overpowers Xavier and becomes a destructive threat to the entire Marvel universe. Luckily, he would be defeated later on by the combined efforts of the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, who sacrificed themselves to take him down, although were eventually returned and reborn in a pocket universe created by Franklin Richards, which then led to Heroes Reborn, which also wasn't great. And at number 2, Homelander and Black Noir. So heads up friends, if you have not read The Boys, we're talking the comics, and are watching the show, this may spoil revelations yet to come in later seasons, so spoiler alert, you've been warned. In The Boys, the comics, as the story progresses, we learn some startling news about Homelander and one of his fellow members of the Seven. Black Noir, the silent and enigmatic analog for Batman in this universe, remains a mystery for a long time in the panels, until it is revealed that he is actually actually an insane clone of Homelander's, who is largely responsible for many of the terrible things that Homelander himself thought he was to blame for. Black Noir was created as a contingency plan. Using a refined version of Compound V, Black Noir's existence is to ensure that Homelander never oversteps, and if he does, it is Noir's mission to kill him. But being forced to reside and work so closely with Homelander drove Black Noir insane, and he would go around committing horrifying atrocities in Homelander's costume as a means of trying to get Homelander in trouble enough to have his death ordered. Smart. During a massive confrontation inside the Oval Office, Black Noir actually kills Homelander. But fear not, friends, he eventually meets his own end thanks to Billy Butcher. And last but not least, in at number 1, Forever Evil, with Lex Luthor and the whole crime syndicate. This one is somewhat of a two-parter. In the New 52, Forever Evil was a DC crossover event that ran from 2013 to 2014, and saw the crime syndicate of Earth 3 having taken over all of Prime Earth. We're talking evil alternate versions of the Justice League people, except, you know, they want to commit crimes, hence the name Crime Syndicate. It's bad news. Ultraman, the evil variant of Superman who would grow weaker with the sun's rays, moved to the moon to cover up the sun to ensure that he never lost power. Nightwing's identity is exposed on national television, the world loses electricity entirely. Governments are toppled. Essentially, things are real bad. But perhaps what's worse is the fact that the Crime Syndicate managed to defeat all of the Justice Leagues. Like, all of them, minus 2 members, Batman and Cyborg, and also technically Catwoman, with Cyborg being unconscious at the time that we see that he's survived, and Batman noting in Forever Evil issue 2 that the rest of the League did not make it. Now they join up with Lex Luthor, who has created an Injustice League to combat the threat. But Luthor has his own evil alternate to worry about, Alexander Luthor of Earth 3, who is actually a hero on his Earth, who operates similar to Shazam by calling out Mazaz to get his power. Except when he is brought to Prime Earth and eventually freed from the Crime Syndicate's captivity, he kinda goes rogue and starts killing off a bunch of heroes. While he never flat out defeats Lex before Lex manages to realize their voices are the same, hence why he's able to transform Alexander into his weaker self by calling out Mazaz, Alexander Luthor still manages to kill a bunch of other heroes and put the Crime Syndicate to shame. Regardless, the Crime Syndicate in their takeover managed to take out their Justice League counterparts, and yeah, that's pretty darn intense to begin with.
Number 10. Cyclops. The rivalry between Scott and Logan is legendary at this point, and it's not just all about Jean either. Even when she's not there, they still can't get along. She's usually not there because she's temporarily dead. It's fine, it's a thing. The fact that they can't get along has a lot to do with their different base personalities. Scott is not only an authority figure, but someone who leads through opposition a lot, and he could care less if you like him or not. Wolverine responds super poorly to authority and is much more of a let's get this done, not a let's think this to death kind of person. Also a bit of a lone wolf. So they fight, be it verbally or physically, but this fight was actually because Wolverine was being influenced by the villain Sauron. Because of this, he began to hallucinate, seeing his teammates as enemies instead. This led to him tussling with Cyclops. While Wolverine was able to pin Cyclops, Scott was able to blast him off and far away and keep the fight on his own terms. People forget how strong Scott's optic blasts are. They're much more than just pretty lights. Number 9. Gambit. Now, unlike Cyclops, Wolverine and Gambit can get along and have enjoyed an easygoing friendship at times. So when these two face off, it's oft times more along the lines of intense sparring sessions, like it's more like let's see what we each can do. Such as in Uncanny X-Men number 273, where they fought in the Danger Room before it was a person that Xavier had been keeping trapped after it developed sentience. Dark stuff. Gambit's not above fighting dirty, which he does here. They're on par, which is already saying something. Old man Logan. This is when Gambit realizes that he can make the Danger Room kinda psych Wolverine out, and he makes it create Lady Deathstrike within it. Now, Wolverine has some pretty complicated feelings about her, and so this leads to Gambit being able to overpower him. Well played or dirty pool. You decide. Number 8. Beast. That's right, even Dr. Hank McCoy is getting on the action of defeating Wolverine. Though it wasn't by choice, Beast and Wolverine have a pretty good relationship, so this happened while Beast was brainwashed. This occurred in the Here Comes Tomorrow storyline. Beast was taken over by an entity called Sublime. Sublime is a sentient bacterial life form. Sublime finds it difficult to infect mutants, and as a result, there are rumors that he is the cause of the societal hysteria surrounding them. Although, let's be fair, in some cases it's not hysteria. When Sublime had control of Beast, it also harnessed the Phoenix Force within him, and so when Logan went to take him on, Beast was able to negate his healing factor, turning him just into a guy with some enhanced reflexes and adamantium skeleton, which is still a lot, but not as much as it could be. Beast actually killed him in this encounter, and Jean had to go back in time to ensure the incident never took place in order for him to survive it. Number 7. Storm. Storm can control the weather. She has been worshipped as a god. There's something very wrong with the world if she can't defeat Wolverine. Now, while Storm and Wolverine may at times have a romance that's kind of so out there, at least at first glance, that I love it, this didn't stop her from killing him in X-Men Forever. This was a series that in a very noirish fashion opens with a dead Wolverine. He was the shock kill with the gasp at the beginning. Who could kill Wolverine? Well, it turned out that was an evil Storm. That's who. But why though, you may be asking? Well, keep asking, because the series was cancelled, so the answer was never revealed. Number 6, Kitty Pryde, aka Shadowcat. Kitty is a very powerful mutant, but she wasn't always perceived that way. Her depiction has grown over time as people have really come to ponder and appreciate just how truly terrifying a phasing ability is. Kitty taking out Wolverine shouldn't really be much of a shock. In a what-if story entitled What If, Wolverine Enemy of the State, Kitty would kill Wolverine. In this story, Wolverine had fallen under Hydra control, and he was proving quite the danger, killing his former friends and allies. As a result, Kitty ended up engaging with him. Since he was so out of control, she stuck her hand through his head and re-solidified it inside, destroying his brain, and her hand was stuck in his skull since he had chopped it off. And as a result, he couldn't get it out and he couldn't heal. Ouch, and also gross. Number 5, Apocalypse. Now you would think you wouldn't just try to take on an essentially immortal, terrifying, powerful mutant with just your claws. Yeah, you might think that, but you're not Wolverine. Ultimate Wolverine decided to take on Apocalypse head on. But I mean, a lot of things happen in the Ultimate Universe. Needless to say, it does not go well for Wolverine. Apocalypse is pretty similar between 616 and 1610. Wolverine gets some good hits in, but with Apocalypse's pedigree, healing factor, and other powers, Wolverine gets pretty badly beaten. Number 4, Magneto. We've talked about this many a time here on Top 10 Nerd. Magneto once ripped out Wolverine's adamantium skeleton, just separated it from his body, pulled the metal right out through the skin. While this didn't kill him, it did put him out of commission for a while. This action, while gruesome, also gave some a that actually makes a whole lot of sense. Why hasn't he done that before now? That's because he was being nice. Nice guy Magneto. This action proved to be the breaking point for Charles, who erased Eric's memory using his telepathic powers. Actually, he just erased the whole self as a person. This action would unleash a darkness in Charles, and also unknown to him at the time, merge their two consciousnesses together, eventually creating the being known as Onslaught. Number 3, speaking of Onslaught, here he is. Once the fusion of Charles and Magneto was complete, the world was graced with Onslaught, an event that still has mixed reviews to this day. Well, however you felt about it, Onslaught was for a time described as beyond Omega level. People weren't going up against him one-on-one. No, you went in teams, and sometimes team-up teams, like the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. Wolverine against Onslaught, like a fly being swatted. Number 2, Proteus. What I'll always remember most about Proteus is Cyclops throwing coffee on Wolverine after. Proteus is the extremely powerful son of Moira McTaggart, too powerful to even boast a conventional physical form. Proteus can bend matter and reality to his will, so the best solution is obviously to take him on head on. Just jump right in there. Both Wolverine and Nightcrawler attempt this, and let's just say it goes horribly, horribly wrong. Proteus just completely unmakes them, warps them, turns them into goo and ooze, then warps the world around them. Wolverine is incredibly shaken by this encounter, for obvious reasons, and it causes Nightcrawler to have a crisis of faith. Cyclops needs Wolverine to fight, so he throws coffee on him. You have to forge your own path as a leader. And number 1, Wolverine. No, I don't mean like his demons or something poetic like that. I mean another time-traveling version of himself. Now, we've had a couple of versions straight up murder each other for the greater good, although some would argue it's always for the greater good because one of these with a zombie, you just gotta really decide. Play it by ear, basically. In the Age of Ultron, which is completely different from the MCU film, no comparison at all, really, Wolverine ended up in a bit of a paradox, leaving the world with 2 Wolverines at the same time. And that's just one Wolverine too many, so one had to go. Wolverine murdered himself actually more than once in this arc, always from behind. I don't know, just there's something about that. Like, come on, look yourself in the eye.